Over the past few months, most of our coverage of the Middle East has been focused on turmoil. But there is another, much more positive story also happening in the region. According to author Schroeder, the Arab world is going through a surge of entrepreneurial spirit. And guess what? Women are a big part of it. Schroeder makes his case in a new book, Startup Rising, and I spoke to him from New York. Christopher, so among the political turmoil and violence that we keep reporting on in the Middle East, you say there is actually a much more optimistic story.
It's a hopeful story for sure. I mean, the terrible things we know are very real. In fact, even in my hopeful story, I know entrepreneurs who have been literally killed in Egypt and in Syria. But the fact is that now, because of technology, an entire generation of people throughout the Middle East are not only looking for their political voice, but they're expressing it in their desire for a better life economically. And so these tech startups I'm seeing are just phenomenally powerful and very hopeful.
So what are some of the companies, the interesting companies that you've come across?
One of the biggest surprises is you see it really in almost every country, and often what you'll see is people who are trying to solve problems in their backyard. So for example, if you think traffic is terrible in Cairo as it is, a lot of young entrepreneurs think, well, that's a software problem. So what they do is they end up building crowdsourcing apps so people can share the best routes in real time so they can navigate it overall. Education is a real challenge in a lot of parts of the Middle East, even though they spend a fair amount of money there. But you have an entire generation of young entrepreneurs who are saying, you know something, I'm going to build a Khan Academy, an online schooling in Arabic to help supplement education for free. And with so many people having access to it, they now have an opportunity to reach people that could never be reached even 5 or 10 years ago.
I love it. I mean, to some extent, though, isn't this the story of demographics, that you have an area of the world where, what, a third of the population is under the age of 25? They are bound to be tech savvy, there's pretty high unemployment, and they are looking for ways to make their countries better.
I think that a lot of these young people had come to the conclusion, which was a very similar motivation in the Arab uprisings, that the top-down approaches to problem solving they weren't going to wait for. And in fact, I meet a lot of older people in the Middle East who says, well, it'll take a generation to fix a problem or two. And these young people are saying, I'm not waiting for a generation. I've got the technology. I see the way the rest of the world lives. I can collaborate with everyone. I can leverage very, very excellent software from anywhere around the world. I'm going to go at it now.
How much is economics an issue, though? Because you do write about the poverty levels in some of these countries and the fact that not a very large number of people actually even have smartphones yet.
So what is so interesting and moving to me, and this is of course true in emerging markets generally, but you know, the average penetration of mobile technology generally is 100% in many of these countries, meaning people have more than one not smart device. But what is such a powerful story to me is that the adoption of smart devices are unbelievable. I've seen sub-$50 smartphones, which means that the adoption will become very wild quickly. I had members of the experts in the mobile environment in Egypt, for example, who told me within 3 years they think 50% of the population are going to have smartphones. That's 50% of Egyptians walking around not just with better phones, but with supercomputers in their pockets.
Okay.
And this is something that I think will be very powerful.
Christopher, I have to ask you about women, because you have this amazing statistic that there are more startups headed by women in the Middle East than there are in Silicon Valley. I think people would find that astonishing.
It's a mind-blowing, you know, the data, people are working it through, but I can tell you anecdotally to every startup competition that I go to, or any gathering, which can be 1,000 people or more, easily a third are women. And if you go to a lot of Silicon Valley events, you won't see that necessarily. And they are unbelievable and phenomenal and very well-prepared entrepreneurs.
That is great. Christopher Schroeder, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.